August meeting?
Yeah. On vacation.
Cool.
So you're Patty?
Wait till Mr. McKee is all through here.
I'm the Patty.
Okay, friends, we're all set to go here? There are no old business, I'm sorry, there is no old business board meetings this evening. Are there any other changes to our agenda as you received for this evening? If not, okay, let's call this the June 4th meeting to order. With the Scouts, please stand up and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Have a seat. Will the clerk please call the roll? Thank you, John.
Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Mr. Kosar?
Here.
Mr. Morvay?
Yes.
Mr. Cage?
Here.
Mr. Dragish?
Mr. Dragish will be on his way. He just called me. Really late. Okay, thank you. Okay, you've all received the minutes from the May 21st meeting. Are there any revisions to those minutes? If not, they stand approved on a record. Reading of communications. Mr. Tisch?
I have no communications.
Okay. Mr. Morvay, communications.
Yeah, I have a few here. Joe, there's a house being built on 101, I believe it's 101 Neville Court or proximity, and a couple of the neighbors have called, and it seems to be taking a long time to construct. It's been several months that the house is being constructed. There's building material blowing around. They were asking if there was any ordinances about, first of all, building material, and second of all, the length of time in which you have to complete a project. So I told them that I would bring it up with you, and once I hear from you, I'll report back to them. So
That'll be the one on the corner, I guess is the newest one, where
Yeah.
Neff Court, Neff Drive.
yeah, it's real. It's got to be 101. It's got to be like right around 101 now. I did have another complaint about a 61 Montgomery that there seems to be debris and old Christmas trees and stoops and something on the corner there. I don't know that falls into our ordinances, but maybe perhaps just a letter asking to maybe tidy that up a little bit. Let's see. As far as old stuff that we've talked about before, and I'm going to bother you about the hitching post again, the one on 224. Did we learn anything about that?
Still haven't gotten any information back from the engineer's office.
Okay. On the, as you go up on phase 2, the northeast latter part of the project, I know it's a transition from the new now to the old, and it was just they put dirt up against that sidewalk there, and it just seems like that's going to get washed out. I know it's temporary anyway until we start phase 3, but I don't know how long that's going to last there. You know, it's just dirt that's been pushed up against the sidewalk, and a good rain's going to come and wash that out. Maybe I thought they were going to actually put like maybe a paving or something there to hold that.
This is on.
It's on the northeast side of the road as you're going.
Northeast side.
Yeah, north on 46.
Where it swings back around.
Yeah. It's the very end of the project, and it's the transition there.
Not seated.
It's seeded, but it's just like it's not that much dirt, and it just seems like it's going to get washed out. So take a look at that and see. I don't know. And maybe, you know, I mean, if we are going to proceed with phase 3, it may not even be an issue. let's see, were you going to report on the water line a little bit later?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What about, we asked, I know they did the striping, but that sewer that's sunken there by the old First Place Bank, now Farmers, on 224, right at the light
Right,
there.
there's both ends, the one on the north end of the green and that one they've not attended to as yet, and I don't have a date when they'll
Okay.
They did get the striping done this past weekend.
Okay. And then you'll address not Dartmouth, but Chapel Lane with us a little bit later. If there's any update on that. Okay. Let's see. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor?
Nothing.
Nothing. Mr. Ruino, you have any communication?
Yeah, just two pieces of communication. I did receive a notice from the Ohio Department of Transportation. The Safe Routes School grant that was applied for, we were not successful in getting this year. I've asked MS if they can find out, if they can get a copy of the rating criteria to see where we fell short on that. And the other one is a meeting notice for the Ohio Public Works Commission, the next round. They'll be holding their summer workshops on July 1st and July 2nd at Eastgate. It's time to start thinking about projects. That's all I have under communication.
Okay, Jim. Okay, number 6, reports of the committees and the city manager. Mr. Morvay?
Nothing to report than I reported last time. We are in negotiations or in the midst of putting together a contract with the architect for the new fire station, which will be down by the Township Park on Herbert Road. Is where the new station will go. And to address Frank, we met last week, we have a city township fire district, and both the township and the city pay taxes for that fire district. There was a capital improvement fund that was created, and it's I don't even know the millage, Frank, but there is a millage that goes into that fund. And it's the building, capital improvement, equipment, and that allows us to, on a regular basis, update equipment, safety equipment, training, not training, but the capital improvements for vehicles, and that's where this money is coming from to help fund that building. So I hope that answers your question, and sorry that I was short with you last week. And other than that, I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Mr. Morvay. Mr. Kozar?
I have my report from the court for the month of May. We had a gross collections in court of $10,585.12. We had net to the city, after the various deductions were made, of $8,315.12. The statistics that I've been reporting this year, we had 362 traffic stops in the month of May. We gave 297 written and verbal warnings. So we gave citations and arrests of 65. That calculates out to 18% got citations. Now, there's been some questions raised on we're either doing too many traffic stops, and I want to point out that in order to make a traffic stop, you must have probable cause. You can't just stop a black car because you don't like black cars. You can't stop a red car because they look like they're going fast. You must have probable cause. But since the question was raised, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6, whatever we've been averaging for the month of May, it was approximately 1 out of 5. We did some research. The police department did some research, and it's on the internet if anybody's interested in doing it. And for Mahoning County, the Highway Patrol's activity. They made a comparable number, 5,291 stops. They gave out 4,254 verbal or written warnings. They ticketed 1,037 people, and that calculates out to 19.6%, which compares to our 18%. That could be a fluke. So taking the most recent, that was a 4.5-month period for the year, January 20th through June the 2nd. They are current at midnight, almost. Taking the entire state of Ohio, they made 227,491 stops in this 4.5-month period. They gave 180,508 warnings, written and verbal. So they gave citations of 46,943. Over the total stops, calculates out to 20.6% compared to our 18%. I guess why I report those numbers and why we did it, somebody was questioning why we don't give more tickets, why we don't give less tickets, why we don't make fewer traffic stops. I think our police department does an excellent job, and we are traveling in pretty good company when we are comparable to the Highway Patrol. That's all I have.
Excellent, Mayor. Thank you so much for those that information, sir. Mr. Ruino.
I've provided each of you with a copy of the report from our consultant on the activity of the 24-inch water line. The last digs that we performed last week, we did find solid pipe on both ends, so we have a starting and finishing point. Basically, it looks like somewhere about 700-800 feet north of 224 we're solid, and at the south side of the bore underneath the Ohio Turnpike, the line appears to be solid. There was some signs of deterioration there, but to an acceptable manner that we can hook onto the bell of the pipe and start off fresh again. So that limits the amount of work that will be required at some point in time to about 2,600 feet, or less than a half mile. So that's, I guess, the best of bad news that we can expect on that. We are looking at some various alternatives. They're not included in the report as yet as far as what the cost would be for total replacement versus lining or directional bore. And also looking at other alternatives of maybe restructuring the way we get water into our system via going to the water tower instead of coming all the way over to the reservoir. So there's just some options that we're looking at, and that'll complete the report once we have all of that information. Looking at the what I mentioned earlier, the Ohio Public Works announcement of their workshops, certainly, in my opinion, would be a good project to go forward with this year with the Ohio Public Works Commission. Whether we decide to go with a grant or a loan, we'll come to that conclusion later on. We have the costs at hand and see what our best options would be. We'll obviously have more on that in the future as we go. More information becomes available. I've also been working on the Consumer Confidence Report. Those are due July 1st. I have the draft pretty much ready to go to the printer. And in front of you, I dropped off our bottles. We're doing lead and copper testing again the month of June, July, and August. As some of you recall from last year, that's a first sample. What you need to do is wait till evening hours, let the water settle in your house, capture that test before any water is used in the house, fill the jar, and the information as to where you got it from the kitchen, bathroom. If you have an open spigot, a wash basin or something down the basement, it's best to pull it off of a spigot without an aerator on it. Run it, just a crude sample of the water without aeration, without having been first flushed, and provide that, get those back to me as soon as you can. We'll have those tested. We're required to have 20 samples throughout the city, and I know some of you in the audience have provided assistance last year. If you're willing to do the same this year, we certainly can use your help with that. And You asked about Chapel Lane. I've not gotten anything back. We've asked MS in our last staff meeting to provide us with a proposal for some of the options we talked about up there, and I haven't gotten anything back. I will see them tomorrow at Eastgate, and I can remind them to try and push that along. That's basically all I have this evening.
Okay. For the record, I want to make sure that Don Regish is here as of 6:14 p.m. Mr. Fortunato, any to add?
A few items. I expect the new demolition permit process ordinance will be approved by planning and zoning next week, and that'll be on council's agenda. It's probably its July meeting.
Okay.
We've looked at our floodplain management ordinance and the riparian ordinance model from Mahoning County, and I've passed that out to all members of planning and zoning to take a look at, as well as the city engineer. I think we're pretty well covered with our floodplain management ordinance that we have in place right now. It's under the building code, chapter 13 of our ordinances. The police department has my draft of the dangerous drug ordinance at this time. They're reviewing that to let me know if they need any changes or what their thoughts are on that. We talked about that dangerous drug ordinance before. It's kind of a gap ordinance between illicit drugs and somebody who has drugs prescribed to them. I've written a few income tax opinion letters to Vicki relative to just some administrative issues, statutes of limitations, things like that. And we're starting to look at some conditional use permit issues around the city, at least one of them, where we've granted a conditional use permit for a particular use that's kind of out of control, best way to describe it at this point. And it's really the first time we've encountered that in a long time. But what people need to realize is a conditional use permit is just that. Your use is conditioned upon your complying with the terms of your permit. And those are to be restricted or enforced strictly, and we plan on doing that. So we're looking at making some modifications to that ordinance, maybe just a straight enforcement of that ordinance in mayor's court or by the zoning, by the city manager. But we're going to start taking a look at enforcing some of the conditionally permitted uses that are not really complying, and there aren't many that aren't really complying with their permit. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Item 7, under recognition of persons desiring to speak before council, may I ask you to step forward to the podium, state your name and address clearly for the record, and keep your comments brief. I'll go call off your list here. Mr. McKeon?
Good evening. I'm Frank McKeon. I reside at 220 Glenview. Joe, I'd be happy to provide a specimen, but I don't need a bottle quite that big.
That was funny, Frank.
A couple things. Mr. Morvay, I'm sure your interests are sincere in regard to feeding back information, but it appears the stuff that you're feeding back should have gone to the city manager in the first place, i.e. the stuff up on the items up on F Drive. Why aren't these citizens going to the city manager? Basically, you gentlemen have no operating responsibilities. You're a legislative branch, and that's where it should be going. I'm sure it was sincere,
But Frank, everybody has my phone number. We gave it out publicly. So if
Well,
I'm on council, I'm serving
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
constituents. And if they have a complaint, they bring it, I go to Joe. So that's the
we
problem.
don't need a middleman, is my point. Okay.
Frank, I think we owe it to the citizens of Canfield, the city of Canfield. People call me, and my response is, I'm not responsible for that, but I will make the person that is responsible aware of it, and then I follow up on it. So I think we owe it to the people that call.
Well, you can draw that line anywhere, and I'll just bring up my point. Next item, I understand we missed applying a lien to that house that house was torn down on Northview, and the lot was sold, and we missed recovering our money, if I'm not mistaken. So we need to close that loophole a little tighter. If I'm not mistaken, we had one open council position on this election period, and I would hope that the Vindicator and/or the town crier can mention that so we can find out who who may be interested in
Frank, let
that.
me stop you right now. Nobody's up this next year.
I believe you are, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Can't run, Frank.
Well, I'll double check. I thought you
Double
were.
check, Frank, but I'm through next year.
He
I
ran.
go through 15.
We ran together, so he's on a 4-year term, just like I am.
Okay, I'll double check.
You better check that, Frank.
Okay.
You've been,
Don't print it till
you've been
we find
mistaken in
out.
the past, so that might just, you know.
Okay. In regard to these comments made in regard to 5 out of 6 police stops resulting in no citations, I'd like to take maybe a different side of that argument. Sure, that makes us feel compassionate and gives us a warm, fuzzy feeling inside. But when I was in school, 1 out of 6 was failing. 1 paycheck out of 6 papers, that's not acceptable either. 1 field goal out of 6 attempts is not much for job security. So my opinion, 1 citation out of 6 is a questionable practice. So, if 6 patrolmen come upon an infraction, and we can assume they are legitimate, 1 citation gets issued. So if we had 1 officer who issued a citation every time, he or she would produce the same results in regard to the number of citations issued. I'm not in any way advocating less officers. If our goal is to change behavior, as far as I'm concerned, money out of my wallet would do the trick.
You should bat 300 in the majors and make 15 million.
That's true.
Frank, before you go on to your next point, I just would like to point out to you, 22 miles an hour through a school zone, you're breaking the law. Breaking the law, you should be ticketed. I'm not so sure that you deserve a ticket at 22. But that's my opinion.
That's the law.
Nothing but legally. You got to be careful what you're saying.
Watch what
you wish for.
I'm talking about citations now, and they may or may not issue citations.
That is a citation. Speeding.
Let's look at this practice a little closer. For the sake of argument, assume I am representing a person who received a citation. Let's say it's a stop sign violation. We go to mayor's court, we plead not guilty. We then return for a hearing with the city attorney and continue to plead not guilty. Now we appear for a trial in front of the mayor. The mayor finds us guilty. When we request a trial at the Mahoney, we then request a trial at the Mahoney County Court. In the meantime, representing this person, I have surveyed the police records for the last 6 months or so. Let's say I find 84 warnings for stop sign violations and 16 citations. That's the 1 to 6 ratio. I could find no written guidelines instructing officers when to give a citation and when to give a warning. My comments to the judge would be, the evidence shows the practice of warnings versus citations is subjective and discretionary.
Well, your evidence wouldn't be admitted in. It would violate some evidentiary rules. It's irrelevant. There'd be an objection, and you wouldn't be able to get that evidence in. But under your scenario, if you want to continue...
Perhaps. I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to hang out my shingle pretty soon.
Yeah,
That
would just be inadmissible, Frank, that those things are irrelevant to the case at hand.
Perhaps.
And there'd be an objection.
I'd say furthermore, Your Honor, we have shown the application of law has been done in an inequitable manner. My client happened to be cited. The law should apply to everyone and not on a roll of the dice. I move for dismissal of the charge. Thanks for your time. Think I can pass the bar?
I think you could go to a bar, but...
Andy, do you want something? You want to add tonight, Andy? Do you want to talk tonight or not? I thought you were here to speak. I'm sorry. All right. Under old business, there is none, and under new business, there is none. So leaves council's comments. Mr. Tisch.
I have no comments this evening.
Mr. Dragish.
I have none other than just apologizing for coming in a little bit late.
No problem. Thank you. Mr. Morbid.
Yeah, so I have a little story to tell you. This is about Mayor's Court in Canfield, Ohio. And this happened to be a man by the name of Frank. Not you, Frank, but just a man named Frank.
A good man.
So the man was sitting in the front row at the town meeting. he kept heckling the mayor. And as the mayor's giving a long speech, and Frank continues to heckle him. Finally, the mayor could not stand it any longer. He pointed to the heckler and said, "Will that gentleman please stand up and tell the audience what he's ever done good for the city?" And Frank stands up. He says, "Well, Mr. Mayor," the man said in a firm voice, "I voted against you last election."
Mayor? On that note.
I think what I said tonight might be my last comment on this to Frank. Frank, I just don't think I can convert you over to a logical way of thinking. So I may just give up.
I feel the same way about you.
Okay, that's it for this evening. Thank you very much for coming. Meeting adjourned.